You touched upon growth in Europe. One of the interesting insights that we got from producing the Staffing Trends report was a topic which we called it Mediterranean Renaissance. But what we were talking about was we indexed the European staffing market since 2013 to find out which markets have been growing the most strongly. And, you know, what we see is that a lot of firms that are interested in expanding into European markets tend to head to UK or Germany, which of course are very large and important markets. But actually they've been among the slowest growing markets over that period, just marginally ahead of France, interestingly. And the two countries with standout growth since 2013 have been Spain, which has grown 166%, and Italy at 144%. And it was interesting you mentioned Italy earlier. So Randstad's CEO, Jacques van den Broek, described Italy as the gift that keeps on giving in Randstad's Q3 2021 results announcement. So clearly Randstad think it's a very positive market. We forecast a 2022 growth in Italy and Spain at 15% and 14% respectively. So that puts them at the front of the pack of the European staffing market. So I mean, I guess the good news this year is that we're looking at a very positive staffing environment in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there are some challenges ahead, like we discussed the worker shortage, but the industry is very well positioned to play a larger role in overcoming those. And the sector has also clearly become more important in recent times to enable well-functioning labor markets. But indeed, as you mentioned, and some staffing markets which used to have a lower level of maturity in the past due to various reasons seem to be catching up more quickly as your estimates demonstrate. And actually the penetration rates of the sector in Italy and Spain, for example, have historically been lower than in more advanced markets like the UK and the Netherlands. So there's quite some room for expansion indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've seen any employer come out of this pandemic thinking that they need less flexible labour models. So I think that does put the industry in a good position to continue to grow, not just this year, but in the future. I mean, I guess one market that we should mention that is distinctly less positive, sadly, is Ukraine. And we've seen a number of initiatives and donations made by staffing firms over the past few weeks in response to the evolving humanitarian crisis. So could you say something about how you see this is impacting the staffing industry at the moment?
Yeah, it's of course a tragedy that is still unfolding. Just looking at the United Nations Refugee Agency figures, just after 3 weeks of the conflict, already 3 million refugees, and mostly women and children. Undoubtedly, the war and the refugee crisis will have an impact on economies and labor markets, and primarily at first in Europe. And some countries will, of course, be more impacted than others, and this depends on different factors, such as their exposure to the economic countermeasures, like the sanctions, but also on the number of refugees that they receive. And clearly, the integration of Ukrainian refugees will require massive efforts from public authorities, but private actors play a big role here as well. So indeed, as you indicated, the World Employment Confederation and the staffing industry is focusing on how it can support refugees displaced by the war. So some of the initiatives from the industry include agencies offering transport and accommodation, but also legal and psychological assistance for agency workers. Websites and local support centers are being put in place to assist refugees. And in some countries, cooperation agreements between public and private employment services are developed to facilitate labor market access for refugees. If we look at the impact of the war on the sector, of course, in Ukraine, but also in Russia, it's quite clear that the impact is devastating for the industry. Many staffing companies which had business in those countries have ceased or needed to cease their operations by now. For other countries in Europe, it's a little bit early to tell, as different factors are at play, and they might impact the sector in different ways. And which factors might be stronger depends also on the countries and on the composition of the sector in the country. So in some countries, it might be the case that the large numbers of refugees might actually lead to increased activity in the staffing sector, as the sector provides an easy entry point to jobs for refugees. On the other hand, some sectors are more impacted than others by the economic sanctions and consequences of the war, such as the reduction in manufacturing inputs that are imported from Russia. For example, the German manufacturing sector is actually experiencing impacts like this right now. And this is also a sector which is a major employer of agency workers in Germany. And we are hearing about a number of agency workers being let go there as a consequence of the war. So while it is a little bit too early to make a full impact assessment, we continue, of course, to monitor the developments and, of course, hope for a peaceful and quick end to the crisis.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for your other insights as well. Just to repeat what I mentioned at the beginning, this report that we're discussing is a free report. So if you want to access a copy for yourself, just go to www.staffingindustry.com and you can access that under our free resources. So thank you for your time, and goodbye.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.